I'm Nicole Killian in Washington, and you've been listening to a CBS News special report. San Diego law enforcement just provided an update on the shooting at an Islamic center. At least 3 victims are dead. 2 suspected shooters are also dead. We're told all children who were inside, though, are confirmed safe. We want to go straight to CBS News national security contributor Sam Vinograd. She is also the former Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism at the Department of Homeland Security. And Sam, we heard from law enforcement officials there on the ground, as well as from the FBI, that they're investigating this as a hate crime. Where does this investigation go from here?
Well, at this point, Nicole, we should assume that the subjects are going to be identified as quickly as possible. And certainly that there will be warrants garnered also as quickly as possible to understand the subjects' patterns of behavior leading up to this incident, whom they were in contact with. There will be ballistic and forensic evidence that is collected to ascertain where the firearms were purchased, as well as ultimately what the motivation was that led these 2 individuals to allegedly go and shoot at the Islamic Center. Certainly, of course, their social media profiles will be reviewed to see if there's any nexus to, for example, foreign terrorism or other individuals in the United States. But I do want to highlight one thing. In my experience as Assistant Secretary for Counterterrorism, we work tirelessly with faith-based institutions all across the country, as well as federal, state, and local law enforcement partners to ensure that if an incident like this did play out, that the response time was as quick as it possibly could be. And we understand that the response time in this case was 4 minutes. Certainly 4 very long minutes for those that were implicated, but 4 minutes. So it does appear that that law enforcement response was quite quick. And what we don't know yet as well is whether there were security guards and other physical hardening mechanisms at the Islamic Center that prevented this horrific incident from being even worse. So a lot of unanswered questions, but the investigation is just beginning. We may not know the subjects' identities for some period of time. So we need to be patient in that respect to wait to hear more details.
And I want to also bring into the conversation now CBS News senior coordinator, producer for crime and public safety, Anna Schecter, who joins us now. And I know you were listening to that press conference a short time ago. What stood out to you?
Well, the fact that there are 2 suspects, both deceased. I've seen a photo of them next to their vehicle, and they're teenagers. So very young suspects. And it appears preliminarily, my sources are telling me, it appears that they took their own lives. This was a very fluid situation where you had 911 calls coming in at 11:43 a.m. from the mosque. And then at the same time, the shooters had left. So calls coming in from a few blocks away. And we learned that the suspects had fired at someone doing work in a yard who thankfully wasn't hit. So what strikes me is just how much worse this could have been. We've heard from eyewitnesses who heard upwards of 30 shots. It's unclear if all of those were fired by the suspects or if a security guard who we know was hit at one point also fired shots, but lots of gunfire in a very short amount of time, Nicole.
And I want to turn back to you, Sam. You know, we also heard from the FBI official who was there on the ground. Even though, again, you know, the local police chief says he believes this is a hate crime, at the same time, this FBI official said that they are still asking for patience to determine a motive. So kind of how do you square those 2 things? He also asked the public for information. So, you know, what does that tell you about how law enforcement officials are going about this?
Well, the FBI agent who briefed the public indicated that they're treating this as a hate crime investigation until it isn't, based on the fact that this incident, this horrific incident, took place at a very large mosque as well. The mosque, as our viewers may not know, also houses a school, other Islamic cultural activities, and more. A hate crime is really a crime that is motivated by an offender's bias against a victim or victims' actual or perceived affiliation with certain protected categories like religion, like sex, and other matters. It may be the case that there was some other motivation in play here. It could be a personal grievance, but because this horrific incident did occur at this mosque, they're treating it as a hate crime at this time until new evidence surfaces that could discount that. But what that means in practice is that there are specialized agents within the FBI that will be deploying to more than likely lead this investigation in coordination with state and local partners. So we should assume that this will be an investigation with law enforcement officials from all levels of government. At some point, intelligence professionals may get looped in as well, but it will be a multi-layered campaign with various a multi-layered investigation with various layers of law enforcement jurisdictions involved.
And Anna, I want to turn back to you. I know you said this situation could be much worse. And, again, certainly good news that no children were harmed in this incident. But talk to me about security and whether or not you expect security could be tightened at institutions like this going forward.
Well, they had already been tightened. Just a couple of months ago, you had the largest temple in Michigan attacked. And it was filled with children who were at an early childhood education program. Thankfully, they all got out safe as well. Similar outcome to this, where you had school children who thankfully got out. What I read from this, knowing that a security guard was hit, is that these institutions have amped up their security. You had a security guard who was trained, who appeared to address the threat because he was hit, possibly killed, according to my sources. So what I'm seeing is security teams in touch with local law enforcement regularly because they know the threat is so high. We have been in a heightened threat environment for more than 2 years, almost 3 years. And now, since the onslaught of the latest war with Iran in late February, when that kicked off, counterterror teams are on even higher alert because the threat is so significant to all houses of worship of all religions. And you see an increased physical presence, and that might have led to this outcome that could have been so much worse. We lost 3 people tragically, but no children were killed. It could have been so much worse, as you said, Nicole.
All right, Anna Schecter and Sam Vinograd, we want to thank you so much for joining us, and certainly we'll come back to you if developments warrant.